Okay, Speck&Tech number 42. Welcome everyone. This time we named it Data Economy. Actually, we were thinking about the title. The title could have been The Meaning of Data, but then we decided to just name it Data Economy.
We have 42 to remind us of the meaning of life, universe, and everything.
And as you can see, this time tonight we're going to have two speakers, as always. The first one will be DARYA KAMKALOVA, straight from Berlin, and the second one straight out of Pisa, UGO SCAIELLA. So, as always, just a brief welcome to tell you why we are here. Speck&Tech started back in 2016 with a series of gatherings. We were more or less 50 people in the room, and things grew a lot. Like we came in 2017, 2019. You can see some of you actually are still here tonight, and we were up to 80, 90, 150 people at some point. This event with Musa had 300 people. And then, COVID hit, and you know how hard it was, and we pivoted, and we even created a podcast. If you didn't listen to it, it's still available on any platform. A few days ago, or 1 month ago, more or less, we turned 6 years old. Happy birthday. Like, we are 6 years old, but at the same time, it feels like we are at the anno zero. So it seems like restarting from the beginning. Not only because a lot of the people that were coming to Speck&Tech are in other parts of the world, in other parts of their lives, but at the same time because there has been 2 years of people not going to events, of events not happening, and of people totally changing their lives because of the pandemic. Right now, we are in a very important part, in a very important phase of Speck&Tech, and a few weeks ago, we actually sent out a form, and we wanted to ask what people think about Speck&Tech and what they think they could do, and the way they could contribute to the association, to the foundation, and to give back. And this is what happened. Actually, we started a new process of engaging new people, of inviting them to our association, of having them work on new initiative of the association. And this actually was a workshop that we did 2 weeks ago on a Sunday. We were around 15 people deciding what we could do of Speck&Tech and new initiatives that could come out of the association. As you see, all the people here were evaluating and looking at the potential ideas and the potential plans of the association. This is actually myself from behind, looking at the huge amount of 19 ideas that came out of Speck&Tech.
Looking at Speck&Tech, no?
Exactly. Some of them were really fun. This was the team. Some of the people that are here are actually people that are helping us even today. For example, for the first time in over 2 years, we will have Speck.
No spoilers.
We will have Speck, we will have beers. Finally, a few restrictions are lifted. And at the end of the event, we will just move to the kitchen. And outside, we will have an aperitivo. Can you call it aperitivo or post-cena? Or
whatever.
But like a networking part where there's going to be beers and Speck and mingling with all the rest of us. How can you support at this point?
Yeah, well, actually, the question is, how is this all possible? How can we manage to give you Speck and beers and everything else and these amazing events? Well, thanks to your support, obviously. The way you can support us is mainly by coming to the events. Coming to the events and showing that the community is here. And you can also, if you want, get some gadgets. We have some T-shirts. The very last T-shirts from the 2020 edition and also a few from the 2019 editions, but there are very few, so get them while they're still here. You can also make a donation, just with some money. You can get some stickers. The stickers are free. We have various gadgets. Today we also have very nice gadgets thanks to Spaziolati, who brought us some T-shirts from Spaziolati that are...
So if you don't have enough of T-shirts, they are there, just go and
Buy
get them. They're really cool. Like you can get them for free. We are not looking at you if you make a donation, but still, You can get the T-shirt that you
Yeah,
want.
donations and gadgets are not linked, but you can make a donation. Then you can go to our website and you can find all our previous events from since 2016. Basically, there are for many there are also videos. And if you have a company, you're looking to hire people or to get your company known, you can sponsor Speck&Tech. And we can put your open positions on the website. These are real positions that are open right now.
So if you're a front-end developer or a back-end developer or whatever developer
site
or
reliability
whatever sort
engineer.
of person that is looking to change their job.
Or a data engineer.
Yeah, Spastidat is hiring. Yeah.
Yeah, follow us on all the socials. Follow the YouTube channel where we put all the videos. This is live on YouTube right now and will be, like all the events, the recording will be available on YouTube afterwards. And yeah, a few important notes about logistics today. Obviously, wear a mask all the time, except when you are drinking or eating or presenting. And then finally, I wish to present you the special guest of the guest of honor of tonight. After a few years, Speck is back.
Speck is back. Speck is back. A few logistic as well. If you need a toilet or the bathroom, is down there. People just tell us that we never say it enough, but it's down there. The donation desk is at the entrance. If you have questions to ask for the speakers, just go on slide.do/st42, or you just go to slide.do and insert the code ST42. As always, we will ask the most interesting questions to the speakers at the end of the talk.
Yeah. Yeah, as Franz was saying, if you want to make a donation, the desk is there, or at the end of the event, I will move over there, or find me wherever I am.
Yeah, you will see Michele waving.
I'm told you can see me.
Okay, thanks for listening to us, to our divagazioni. As always, we will welcome on the stage our first speaker, DARYA KAMKALOVA.
Quite a challenge to take off the mask and not ruin the microphone. Yeah. Okay. Great. Right. Good evening, everyone. My name is DARYA KAMKALOVA. I have been for the first time. I've been in Trento. It was 2018, and I was really fascinated with the nature. I really wanted to come back at some point. So I'm very happy to be here tonight. And let's look at the data economy, the promise of tonight's evening. I have been working in the data industry for the last 10 years. And my experiences span a variety of domains in the data industry, from data acquisition to data productization to data monetization, strategic partnerships in the data area. And in the last 3 years, I have been building the business operations of a global data marketplace with a company called Here Technologies. It is a global location intelligence company, so spazio, dati, location, it's all near. Tonight, before I begin this talk, I want to do a small exercise with you. And I'm going to ask you 2 questions. Question number 1. You will need to capture those answers either on your cell phone. If you have a piece of paper, use this piece of paper, your pad. Typically, speakers hate when people play around with their cell phones while speakers talk. That will be an exception. You are allowed to grab your cell phone and interact with the cell phone. So the question number 1, please capture the answer. If you had a chance to go on holiday anywhere in the world next week, what kind of holiday would it be? You have 2 options. Option number 1, it would be a beach holiday, you know, martini, mojito, whatever, palms, sea. Or would it be a winter holiday? I don't know, snowboarding, skiing? What would it be? I know it's the end of winter, so it's kind of awkward to ask if anybody wants to go on a winter holiday at the end of winter. Everybody's tired of winter, but still. And question number 2, For how long have you had to travel to get to this place, to this venue? We're talking about the distance. For some people, like me, I think it's about 1,000 kilometers from Berlin to here, something like that. If somebody's living right next door, maybe, I don't know, 300 meters. $30 kilometers? 30, 40? Okay. All right. So what I have just done, for those of you who did participate in this exercise, who were good citizens and good listeners, we have just created a data set. So this is how this data set, this is what this data set could, theoretically speaking, look like. Would anybody right now like to purchase this data set? No? No interest. Any ideas if anyone else beyond this audience would like to purchase this data set? No? What about a company like Booking.com? Would they be interested in this information to know what kind of holiday you would prefer next week? If you had to book a holiday, would it be interesting for them? Or maybe companies like Skyscanner. So you see, it's not that useless as you thought in the first second, right? So this is what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the value of data and making data a product. Because a data set is not a product yet. And everybody says that data is the new oil. There is a lot of buzz around this topic. And many companies believe that data monetization is a purely technical challenge. And they tackle this challenge as such, as purely technical. Yet this approach often leads to quite a lot of frustration, to misunderstandings, wasted resources. It sounds a little bit abstract, but if we look at it from the practical standpoint, if you're a data scientist or a data engineer, and if you're creating a data set that nobody really needs, it's heartbreaking. If you're a business leader who's tasked with a goal, create a framework of data as a service, you may get frustrated because you may not necessarily understand what the value of the data is or how you can productize the data. And ultimately, all this can lead to a point where you will be thinking, well, maybe data monetization is just not worth the effort. So we need to know how we refine this oil before we can derive value from this asset. So this is what I'm going to be talking about today. We're going to be looking at what are the other challenges we can face on this road, and it can be a pretty bumpy road, to deriving value from the data. So we will look at three types of challenges today. We'll look at the technical challenges, regulatory challenges, business challenges, and we will also talk about channels that you can use to monetize the data. And finally, we will also tackle the topic of marketplaces. Since I have been building a marketplace for 3 years, I will share some insights from this area. So chapter number 1, technical aspects. What do you have to do in first place? You have to understand your data and your setup. If we go back to the data set that we created, what exactly does it mean? Imagine we have captured this data, and imagine that for some reason, this data gets coded. So one of the attributes of one of these fields does not necessarily contain the values that you captured in your cell phones or in your notepad. It contains something different. It's pretty cryptic, right? And if you look at these codes, if you don't have documentation, if you don't have a specification, you will not be able to figure out what these codes stand for, right? The situation gets even worse if there is no description of the data fields of the headers. It's super difficult to figure out what TD is. You know, travel distance, but God knows, TD, what is it? You may be sitting there and thinking, Darya, but this is all, you know, this is the stuff for the first graders. Seriously, of course we do document what our data means. Of course we have specifications. Of course we have complete rosters of all the codes and we can interpret them all. Simple. But you would not believe how many companies I dealt with that were not able to explain what their data means. And what happens if you cannot explain what your data, what is the content of your data? What happens? Your data loses a fraction of its value, right? So depending on how much you cannot interpret anymore, this value is just gone. Again, it may all sound pretty abstract and very simplistic. Let's look at a real-world example. So that was an excerpt of a data set that I would often work with. Any wild guesses what it is? You're a genius. You're a genius, yes. I spent a lot of time, I spent 5.5 years working with the automotive data. If you work with the automotive data and you know that your data sets describe cars, then it's relatively easy at some point to guess that FT stands for fuel type. Fuel type, P for petrol, D for diesel, G for gas, but you have no idea what kind of gas it is. Is it CNG? Is it LPG? Just gas, okay. If you've never encountered a data set that describes automotive data, zero chance that you can guess what it is. So when we look at data from the quality standpoint, typically we speak about 4 characteristics that you see here on the screen. It's consistency and reliability, it's freshness, richness, and coverage. What is consistency and reliability? Again, if we go back to the example of the data set that we created, and if we look at the data entries that we captured, I asked you a question, okay, what would be the kind of holiday that you would prefer if you had an opportunity to go on holiday next week? And I told you the options were, it is a beach holiday, maybe it is a winter holiday, and God knows, I also said it could be skiing and snowboarding, so I don't know what exactly you captured in your cell phones or in your notepads or whatever. I also asked you, how far have you traveled to get here? And the way you could describe, or the way you could answer this question could be also different. It could be kilometers. If you're living super close to here, it could have been meters, 300 meters. It could have even been miles. People in this audience most probably don't use miles, but if you have, we don't have British people here most probably, but if they were present, they could have answered in miles. And hypothetically, you could also say, well, I spent 2 hours on the road, or 3 hours on the road. So this is inconsistency in the data that can occur. And this is inconsistency also will decrease the value of your data. And to be able to identify those inconsistencies, you need to understand some mechanisms that stand behind your data. Now, if we look at richness, coverage, and freshness, what is richness? Richness? Yeah, if we put it simply, how many attributes are there in the data set, right? So in our case, the data set was pretty simple. It was just the ID, it was the type of holiday and the distance. We could have specified, and we could have make it more detailed. If we look at the holiday type, we could have said, okay, if it is a beach holiday, it would be, I don't know, surfing or windsurfing or kite surfing or whatever. Right? So the amount of attributes is typically described as richness of the data. The bigger the amount of attributes of your data, the more detailed it is, the more value it can potentially deliver. What is coverage? The number of rows. What else?
Coverage of the population, the amount of people or answers in the data set.
Yeah, it can be the population. Very often when we talk about coverage, we talk about the geographies. So we can say, okay, the coverage of our data set is tiny because it is just this audience. It's not even Trento, it's not Trentino, right? So usually when we talk about coverage, it's the geography. We can also talk about industries, right? So if we slice the data sets per industry, one industry would be one coverage, and then a different industry segment would be bigger coverage, for example. And freshness is easier, right? So your data ages as soon as you collected this data set. And your ability to update on a regular basis this data set also increases its freshness, and as an outcome, increases the value. And there are certain data sets that are only collected, let's say, once in a month, once in a quarter, once a year. And there are data sets that are collected real time. For example, vehicle probe data, traffic on the roads. So these are how we typically look at data when we're productizing it. And these characteristics, they often depend on a few parameters that you need to keep in mind. First, the sources. How was this data collected? In our case, we're all very digital, so most probably you just use your cell phone. You could have used a piece of paper and a pen. But even in our data set, the sources would be different because somebody has an iPhone and somebody has an Android, right? So the data will be coming from different types of sources in a way. The systems, for example, Android or iPhone, and data collection mechanisms, they will all influence how consistent your data is, how homogeneous it is, and all this will in turn have an impact on the effort that you will need to invest into standardization, homogenization, and quality control. Again, to make it a little bit less abstract, I was once talking to a car manufacturer, and we were looking at their data set of vehicle probe data. So every car, a connected car, sends every 5 to 10 to 30 seconds, sends a signal, I'm here, this is the latitude, the longitude, this is the direction of travel, this is my speed, and this kind of data is used for traffic management. Every time you look at Google Maps, you see, red sections of the road. This is how this data is typically used. And it's a very simple data set. If you look at this data set, it's just like 5 to 6 attributes, nothing super sophisticated. But this car manufacturer is collecting this data from 8 different systems because their models utilize different type of software, different type of hardware, different type of software, different type of systems. So this data can come with different frequency, for instance. So some of the data signals will be coming with a frequency 5 seconds. Others will come with a frequency 10 seconds. There may be latency, how this data is being sent. So they also have to do some homogenization and standardization when selling this data. Regulatory aspects. We could have spent a whole night here tonight talking about regulations. We're not going to do that. I will just give you a brief idea what to expect when you're tackling this topic. So the first question that usually springs to mind is data usage rights. If I'm planning to productize and monetize some data, Do I even have a right to do that? Is that my data? Can I sell it? Can I resell it? If we're dealing with personally identifiable information, then it's a question of consent. Have I collected consent to collect this data, to store this data, to productize it? Can I secure the privacy? Can I guarantee the privacy and the security for the subjects that are sending data to me? And what is the legal expertise in-house that will be needed to support this product? It can be a one-time effort, for example, to create some terms and conditions, to look into these data usage rights, but it can be also an ongoing effort. And if you don't have the lawyers in-house who can support this, you will need to find them. Chapter number 3, business aspects. One of the first questions that people have when they look into their data is, what's the value of my data? And how can you answer this question? You have a data set. You want to sell it. You want to make it a product. How do you figure out what's the value of this data? Yeah, that's a good way to approach that, to find out what kind of problem can my data solve. Because the same data set can address different use cases and solve different problems. So if we look at the same data set, footfall in shopping malls, so mobility data of people, they're strolling in the shopping malls, it's just one data set. And this data set can address different necessities of very, very different target audiences. On the one hand, it can address the necessity of the shopping mall operators in predictive maintenance and cleaning. On the other hand, the same data set can address the necessities of advertisement companies, because they would be interested to know, okay, so where's the biggest flow of people, and that's the most lucrative spot to place an advertisement. So the value of the data will stem from the use case, from the product that this data is able to help solve. And another example here would be potholes. Potholes in the streets, in the cities. On the one hand, this data set can be helpful for the road maintenance authorities and municipalities. On the other hand, the same data set can be very, very interesting for the map makers. So the companies that create navigation systems, and then they would put a hazard alert in the navigation system to warn the drivers, though, hey, there is a pothole there. So it is very difficult to answer the question straight away. So if you're looking at a data set and you're thinking, okay, I have no idea, what is the value of it? You have to reverse engineer from the problem, from the market, from the use case that this data can address. And the way you can explore those use cases are captured on this slide. So, well, clearly it's market research. You can just look at what other people are doing. The second option is to actually talk to the partners and customers you're already working with and see if they have any gaps, if they could use some of the data products or services that you could deliver to them. And finally, quite a popular option is crowdsourcing. It can be hackathons. It can be, I don't know, all sorts of challenges. When you lack ideas, you can try to involve other people, creative people, and to see if they will generate those ideas. Speaking of use cases, some use cases may come with limitations. If you look, for instance, at the pedestrian flow data, municipalities collect pedestrian flow data via the sensors that they place on the street lamps, for instance, right? And municipalities would often limit the use cases that this data can be applied to. For example, municipalities would say, well, this data can be used for traffic management, but we don't want to share it with the advertisement companies. Right? So, and there are there can be different considerations why you would limit certain use cases. It can be safety, it can be privacy, it can be something different. Then, when you begin create a data product, the question is, what am I selling? Am I selling raw data? Am I selling process data? Am I selling analytics? And if you look at this pyramid, it's usually the amount of data that you will be selling in terms of just sheer volume will shrink when you go up. In many cases, the data value will be reversed. But there are some exceptions. Some companies will not purchase process data. That was my case. The company that I used to work for never purchased process data. They only wanted raw data. And analytics was out of questions at all. So I would need to dig deeper and negotiate the deals to get the raw data. Channels. Channels boil down to essentially three. You're going to have direct sales, reselling and partnerships, and marketplaces. What are the benefits of the direct sales? Super easy. The price what? Elaborate.
You don't have a middleman.
Come again?
You don't have a middleman.
Yeah, you don't have a middleman. So you're free to set the price, and the whole revenue is flowing into your pockets, essentially. With the reselling partnerships, you have to share the revenue with your partner, with your reseller, but at the same time, you may not be able to access the same pool of customers that you can access with reselling and partnerships. And marketplaces, we'll talk about them a little bit in more detail. Okay? So I spoiled it. I was going to ask, so what is the major benefit of a marketplace? The major benefit of a marketplace is scale. And why is it important? Because one of the major questions that every business owner asks him or herself is this question: how can I scale my business? I'm also a business owner, and this is the question that interests me a lot. How can I scale my business? How can I grow my revenue? And marketplaces can be a very, very good way to scale data business. Let's look at it from the data consumer standpoint. And when I say data consumer is essentially anyone who purchases or acquires data to create something new, to create a product or a service. If we imagine that we need to create an app for cyclists, what kind of data would we need? What kind of geographic data? Maps. Yeah. What else? Traffic. Yeah. It's going to be pretty hard to get this one, but yeah. Okay. What else? Weather. Really nice. Come again? Yeah, for instance.
Ground, surface.
Elevation, maybe that's what you mean, or pavement, type of pavement. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I would be happy to have CO2 emissions. There are some cities that are pretty polluted, so you may be interested in finding the routes that are greener. And if we look at this list, this is the data that we said we need, right? What are the challenges here? We need to create this app. We want to get this data. What are the challenges here? Okay, yeah, could be. For instance, that could be a huge issue. Yeah, sometimes you look at the coordinates and you realize that the building is not at the same place. Can be the address. What else? Just finding this data. Just go find it first. What would be your wild guess? How much time did it take me to close the deal, to close the negotiation process of my most complicated contract? How much time do you think it took me? From the beginning to the end? No. 2.5. 4. I was negotiating the deal with the Brazilian government, and it took me 4 years to get the data. Another deal was 2 years, even though I knew straight away where I want to get the data from. BVD, the competitor of Spazio Dati. I knew where I want to get the data from, I knew whom to address, and it still took me 2 years because essentially you're talking to big companies with very rigid terms, and it can take ages. And that was just one data set. And what if you need 5? And all of these data sets are different, right? So you need to find these data providers, you need to negotiate the terms will be different, the limitations, how you can use the data will be also potentially different. That takes time. And when we talk about time, if you need to spend months or years finding the data first, that means extended go-to-market time frame, right? That means that I'm spending my time not even developing my product. I'm preparing this process of developing the product, right? And that means that I cannot sell my product. So the return on investment will be on the horizon, but when exactly, you don't know. Also, there will be different integration points. So you will be talking to different providers. They will be offering you different integration points. The data format might be different. Can be a nightmare. So what Marketplace usually offers, or very often offers, is a simplification of this whole process. So that means that you can potentially find providers of different types of different data sets in one place. In our case, that would be a map, weather, air quality. You can find them all in one place, and then you can create a product. That means that you reduce the go-to-market time substantially. That means that you can create a product faster, and that means that you can sell your product much faster. At the same time, marketplaces offer a good setup for providers too, because that marketplaces accelerate access to demand, right? So you create a product once, and then you get access to a new pool of customers that create potentially vastly different products, but they can tap into your resources. Where it gets really interesting is when a marketplace really becomes an ecosystem. And what I mean under an ecosystem is that it's a situation where the same company may play a role of both a provider and a consumer. So for example, you can see it schematically here. A consumer may be purchasing the data set from the marketplace and then creating a new product and selling this product on the same marketplace, which will be purchased by potential providers. So if we look at how marketplaces can address different challenges, remember I began this talk with 3 types of challenges that usually we face when we want to monetize our data. So that would be the business challenges, the regulatory challenges, and technical challenges. So marketplaces can potentially help tackle them all. In the case of business challenges, again, it's access to demand, access to a completely new customer pool, accelerated transactions. Also, on a marketplace, it's much easier to understand the landscape, the competitive landscape, what's on offer, what kind of data is being sold, what are the business models that are used by providers. And usually, if you're on a marketplace, there is no necessity to have a massive sales team or marketing team, because that would be one of the channels. We spoke about the technology. It can be one integration point for consumers, which is very handy for them. They can find everything in one environment. And regulatory issues can be also simplified because you have access, you have various types of subscriptions. You can standardize the terms. So it's much easier for consumers also to have an overview of what are the terms in the market and what are the providers that I can negotiate the deal easier and faster. And that's it. Thank you very much. If you have any questions. Slido?
Okay, we do have some questions.
Go ahead.
I'll go on the other side. First one. As always, if you want to ask more, just go to slide.do/st42. First, how do you know that people are not just coming up with the data that they're selling to you?
Can you repeat?
How do you know that people are not just coming up, like making up, inventing, with the data that they're selling you?
So the data is fake.
Yeah, could be.
Can be the case that that's why you have you never purchase data without a data assessment first, and this is where you can typically for every deal you request a data sample, and you can also very often you can define what kind of data sample that would be, or if there is a data sample, for example, if there isn't a data sample on offer, publicly available, you can still run a lot of checks and analysis. And if you know the data that you're working with, which is usually the case, very often it's relatively easy to identify that it's false, it's faulty, or it's fake. Does that answer the question? Like, I've never purchased any single data set without doing a very, very proper due diligence and data analysis first.
And also check that the data is kind of correct and linked to the amount, to the origin, to the surface.
Correct. You also, usually you thoroughly investigate the data origin, so you need to understand where your source collects this data from. Does this source have the data usage rights? And typically, when you sign a contract, there are some specific terms that outline those aspects, where the data comes from, how it's been collected, and usually that it shouldn't be fake. I've never seen a fake data set, to be honest, in 10 years.
What is the
But
biggest?
it's possible.
What is the biggest takeaway of your previous experiences as about managing and selling data, apart from this whole slide? I would say your biggest takeaways.
My biggest takeaway is that we're still in the very, very beginning of this era. And there is lots of interesting developments, but still there is a lot of work to be done. And commercializing data is still, it's very, very nascent. So we're going to see lots of new use cases, lots of new applications that we cannot even imagine these days.
Do you suggest any resource, e.g. books, YouTube channels, websites, where we can go to learn more about this topic? It's so enticing.
Books. Yes, but I would need to look up the author. Can we do that later? I will send the links.
We will update the slides
Yes.
and we put them on the
Yeah.
Speck&Tech website with your tips.
Yeah, sure.
One issue with marketplaces is duplication of data and the fact that it needs to be updated continuously. Any hint on that? For example, you're a data provider and you want to put your data on the marketplace, and you need continuously to update description and data sets and samples and whatever.
And what's the question?
Any hint on that? Is there a workaround or a way to manage it easily?
Well, these are two different things. So these are two different things. Updating data and updating the documentation, right? So if you're updating data, there are tons of ways to automate it. Set up an API and push the data to update it on the marketplace in the catalog, or automating this is easy. Automating documentation, I think, is maybe more it's not complicated. I think it's much easier, but it takes much more diligence and attention to detail. I don't think there is a way to automate it except for create some checklists that as soon as you change something in the data, it has to be changed in the documentation.
Checklists.
Checklists, sorry.
Okay, we've got more questions. We'll keep some of them for later, probably.
Sure.
How do you help customers of the marketplace connect different data sets?
Okay, so there are different ways to do that. What we have seen is that sometimes the data density is not enough. for a specific product. So there will be different data providers, but their data density is relatively low, or relatively low for a specific application. And one of the ways to tackle that would be to pool these data sets. And this is an extra service that sometimes marketplace providers offer. You sort of aggregate those data sets, and that's how you homogenize this data, you standardize it, but also increase the data density. Does that answer the question? I think so. This is how I understood it.
It might come also from the web, so I don't know.
If this doesn't answer a question, come back later to me, okay?
Final question. What is the most difficult ethical issue you had to tackle?
Ethical.
Yeah.
All right, so I have been working in the data industry for 10 years, and I know very well how data can be used. I think the most difficult question is understanding. It was not practical. It was not something that I had to really handle. It's more on the theoretical level. There is a great book, for instance, The Surveillance Capitalism. Has anybody read this one? You did? So it's a book thick like this. I think it's about 700 pages, written by, I'm very bad with the names. I will need to look it up. Shoshana Zuboff. I think that was the name. Really bad with the names. What she's writing is how the data is being used to hurt people, right? So to manipulate people. For me, this is the most difficult ethical challenge. I know how much data can deliver, how much value the data can deliver. But on the other hand, I understand very well how cautious we have to be with the data so that we're developing something for the benefit of people and not for the peril.
Thanks, Daria. Another round of applause.
Thank you.
And now off to the second speaker of the night, Ugo Scaiella. Let me see if this works. Yeah, as always. Give me a second.
We are experiencing technical difficulties. Please hold on.
Right. Okay. Ugo, on stage.
Che ti serve la luce? Ok. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm here as, you know, Franz told me that Speck is back, so I decided that maybe this is the right, I got the chance to come here. And I'm presenting this part of what we had done and what we are working on even right now at Spazio Dati. So talking about basically news articles as a source of data, a source of information, and how we are exploiting and trying to extract value from this kind of source. So bit of me. So I got my degree at University of Pisa, and then I spent 2 years as a software developer in a big company. Then I moved to Spazio Dati and leading the Dandelion API team. Dandelion is an entity linking system. Now I'm what could be called a software engineering manager. From a technical point of view, I'm with the strongly typed languages, but I have to admit that in later years, I mean, I did not get the chance too much to work on the code, but when I do, unfortunately, I do in Python, and I have a very bad relationship with Guido, so, you know. And yeah, I like very much the meat, sticks, and so on. And I'm father of 4. So, and Just a disclaimer about this presentation. When I made the slides, I realized that there are too many holes in the slides, and I had to fill with some pictures. And I didn't know how to take pictures, and so I decided to grab randomly some pictures from my Google Photo account. Okay, so don't be scared about that. So let's start what we do as Spazio Dati, just a brief introduction so that you understand why we are working on news articles. And we built Atoka. Atoka is basically a big database about Italian companies. It gives you a lot of information about Italian companies, and we also have a lot of attributes about the company, so you can also search for the company, looking at many aspects of the company, what the company does, where it's located, about the economics of the company, a lot of information. So you can, as you can see here in this screenshot on the left, there are a lot of filters so that you can search. This is used for sales intelligence, for marketing, also for use cases like know your clients, to understand better what your suppliers, what your clients are doing, and so on. And yeah, for each company you have, as I said, a lot of information. We also create some additional, we also produce data, like scores, based on some other data, on some other machine learning algorithms, and so on. And obviously, one of the source of information can be, as I said, there are a lot of sources that we collect, gather, link, refine, and make available to our users. And one of these sources is the web news, so news articles that you can find on the web. And when you think about a news article, I guess that everyone thinks about this product, that is Google News, but there are a lot of other newspaper, web, other services like this. But basically the point is that this kind of data is mostly for free. You can access a lot of info. You have, I mean, you can read a lot of news articles on the web, information on links that have been published in social media, posts, and so on. But when I want to understand whether maybe what's happening around a specific company, like, for instance, here I'm searching for Ferrari, yes, maybe I can get some results. This is the result of the last Grand Prix. And yeah, but maybe I'm not really interested in Ferrari, the car manufacturer, but I'm interested in the canteen. Like, so maybe I have to add some keywords to my query. So searching for Ferrari Trento. And yes, yeah, maybe yes, I can get some information, looking, maybe scrolling, going on the second page and so on. Yeah, I can do something. And, you know, this kind of query refinements that you do manually when you're searching for something, in this way you can basically refine your query and find the exact information you are really looking for. Talking about companies, this is not an easy, if you want to, let's say, understand and make information available for many, many companies, this is not an easy task. This is, for instance, I don't know how many of you knows about this. This is what is called, I don't know if you are familiar with this. What is this? Bloomberg. The Bloomberg terminal. This is one of them. Looking at the user interface, you can't imagine that this costs, basically, I think, in terms of hundreds of thousands of dollars per year, something like that. Obviously, it's not just that. But this is the section of the Bloomberg terminals that is that shows to the user web articles, basically web news. And you know, when you're trading, when you are operating on the markets, these kind of information are very useful And also they have a lot of constraints and a lot of issues to deal with, because they have also to be very fast in publishing information. And actually, as you can see here, this is a filter, BP, this is the British Petroleum, so it's a very huge corporation. And these are the news articles related to business, to British Petroleum. So the user can enter any company here, can search for the name of the company and get the list of latest news articles with different rankings and so on related to that company. So Bloomberg usually, tools like that, deal with not so many companies, actually, because they are dealing with all companies listed in stock exchanges, in public markets, very huge companies that maybe issued a bond, something like that. So, you can, as shown here, BP is very, you cannot just issue a query like BP, because it's too ambiguous. And you can match too many articles that are not really related to the company you are really looking for. And there are a lot of algorithms and systems that you can build to automate this product to make it, to give to the user the correct information. So in this case, Bloomberg is they are developing a lot, they are a huge corporation in Bloomberg. But basically, this is the result of a very, very huge database of roles that are manually edited. Now, as far as I know, they are working on something better, but maybe that can scale better. But basically, it's a very huge database of rules, so search for BP together with some other terms, just like we did previously with the Ferrari Trento. So, but what if I'm interested in small companies, or small or medium companies, and I want something like that, but for my portfolio that is not made by, I'm not having my portfolio Ferrari or Apple or Amazon or whatever. I have in my portfolio, there's the restaurant that is right in the corner of the street. So I do not have a lot of people that can create specific queries for each single company in my database. So I have to find something different, and I have to build something that is able to automatically annotate and identify the company that is mentioned, some companies that are mentioned in my news articles. So for this reason, we started working on this a few years ago now, and we started working, building company TXT. This is the code name of the project we worked on some years ago, and that we are now working on again. That is basically an entity linking system that is able to identify company mention in the text and link those mentions to the exact entity in my database. Then we built also Sedano, that is the code name of the project that basically is the processing pipeline that has some interesting challenges. So this is something we can show you, and what are the issues we dealt with in the last years. And then, we have Atoka News, that is basically the section in Atoka where you can find information about that, how the companies, as we mentioned in the media, local media especially, and some features we built for the end user. So let's start with, company TXT. Okay, so basically, as I said, is an entity linking system, so it's able to identify a mention and link the mention to to the correct row in my company's database. We also link key people of the company. And usually this kind of system, entity linking systems, are made of 3 basic steps. Then there are few exceptions, but we can just simplify it, like mention identification, so the ability of the system to identify that portion of the text, so a sequence of tokens that could be a potential mention in the text. Candidate instruction, so for that mention, identify what could be the potential target of that mention. So in this case, for instance, for spazio dati, maybe also spazio blank dati could be a link for this mention, but many times we saw that someone call us, for instance, spazio blank dati. So it's a kind of, you have to deal also with these typos and so on. We will see something later. And also, yeah, in our database we have 95 Michele Barberas. It's a pretty common name. But just one of those 95 entities is the CEO of Spazio Dati. And this is the disambiguation phase, so where you actually choose the most likely entity that could be related to this particular mention in this particular text. So mention identification is very huge problem. It cannot be resolved just by looking at the text. These are some company names that could be that are very ambiguous, because you can find Panini is just a sandwich, so you can find Panini every time in the news. So if you look just at the string in your text, you can rely on that. But also, if you only search for you can say, okay, no, forgot about the name of the company. Let me focus on the syntax of the phrase. So nowadays there are a lot of tools that you can use to automatically analyze the phrase in terms of its syntax. So identify the subject, the pronouns, the verb, and so on. So, but then you may, some companies like this may be missing, because these are the official the official name of this company. This is the exact official name, and this is but you have to implement some fuzzy matching mechanism. When we have in Spazio Dati, so when we build a token, we have a lot of data. We also have access to authoritative data coming from Chamber of Commerce. And when you think about, okay, so you have all the name of the companies in Italy, so it's pretty easy. But when you think about authoritative company, this does not imply that authoritative sources, it does not imply that you have good data. This is, again, another example of another official legal name of a company. You also have to deal with acronyms and ways people usually mention the company in media, like a restaurant. Sometimes the name of the restaurant is just the name of the owner of that restaurant. So, and while on the sign of the restaurant you have a very different name. There are many aspects that you have to take into account. And as I said here, let me just show you some very funny example of legal names, because when we started working on this project, we struggled a lot working on these company names. These are some examples. The owners of this company were very worried about the fact that someone could write GEA with the E, the second letter, that is in uppercase. So they specified this in the legal name. So this is the legal name of this company. But also this with the accent, okay? They were very worried, so they said when they registered the company in the Chamber of Commerce, they said, we want this in the name of the company. But also, there's another interesting part that this is not my typo. This is a space. And guess what is the positional number of this character, this space? 80. It's the why, and we can see there are a lot of, looking at the legal names as a whole in the database, we can see that there are a lot of spaces added as in the position number 80 in the name. Why? Because, I mean, this is our guess. I didn't verify this. I mean, I didn't check this really, but we guess that in the Chamber of Commerce, there's some old software where the officer can enter the name of the company, but it's a text area limited at 80 characters, and then you have to insert a new line. So this is basically a new line. And yeah, you also have to rebuild the words contained in this field. So you have the data, authoritative but it's not that easy to deal with this kind of data. And also, yes, this is an actual location in Rovigo, I think, something like that. Yeah, it's very interesting. Not joking, really. So once you worked with the names and you spent a lot of time working with that, cleaning, refining the data, then there's also the disambiguation part. For this, for the disambiguation part, you can leverage a lot of data. In particular, the links between the entities in your database are very useful. Like you can leverage the locations. So Spazio Dati has 2 offices, one in Pisa and one in Trento. So maybe if Trento has been mentioned too in the text, maybe this is a good indicator of the fact that maybe that mention refers to Spazio Dati in Trento and not Spazio Dati in Sassuolo. And also that maybe if one of the key people of Spazio Dati have been mentioned again in the same context of Spazio Dati, this is a good, a very important link that you can exploit for the disambiguation, but also other related entities. So Spazio Dati is part of several groups. So if maybe we find those 2 entities, those 2 mentions in the text, again, is another feature that you can use to build a disambiguator. But also information about the activity of the company. So these are, for instance, entities, so keywords, let's say, that we extract from the Spazio Dati website. So if we extract those keywords for all the in the website of all the companies, then we can also, again, add other attributes to the company to improve the disambiguation process. The hard part here is to mix all together with in a single system every information that comes. These are location, these are people, so different kind of information, everything together. So this is the way our brain works. So when you read the text and you have to match the text, what has been mentioned in the text and what we have in a database, you search for this kind of links to disambiguate the mentions. So, but the point is to mix everything together. So this is another challenging part. So how we implemented the company TXT. As I said, we worked on that a few years ago. Now we are working again to improve this approach. And so we experimented with some new techniques and new ways to the ingredients are almost the same. We added some tools and so on, but So in this column, I just highlighted the way we built the current implementation has been built, while here is what we are working on right now. So for for mentions, we started with an approach where we pre-compute all possible mention. So we have the data set of all the company names, and we compute on beforehand the possible mentions, the possible ways the company can be found in a text, looking at and segmenting and cleansing the company names. While nowadays we are working on a different approach where we use a NER, that is a name identity recognition system. Is something that relies on the syntax of the text, and then search on a company names database. It's a different approach, and this obviously is more precise somehow, but you are sacrificing the recall. While this is this could have a very very interesting recall, but the challenge here is to keep precision high. So yeah, you have to. There are some trade-offs, and we're working on that. Also, for the disambiguation, the current implementation, we struggled a bit during the implementation to find a way to mix together all the information I showed you before. And so nowadays we are just considering links between the companies and key people that we find in the text, while here our goal is to integrate much more information in the disambiguation process, like, as I said, information about the location and other information about the sector, the works the company is working on, So, and also, yeah, our ambition is to create also a multilingual annotator, so not dealing just with the Italian company. And these are the results of the current implementation that are, yeah, not bad, but not wow. So I don't know if you are familiar with this kind of graph. This is the plot about recall and precision varying the confidence level of the annotator. So if you set a very high threshold in the confidence, so you keep only the results where the annotator is very confident about the result, then you yield 100% precision, but at the same time you have, this is sometimes called also coverage, so you are just 1 of 5 mention have been identified in the text. While lowering a bit the threshold, then you can improve the recall, so you get many more annotations, but you are sacrificing the precision. Obviously, if this is the rock curve, sometimes called rock curve, if it is higher, the higher the better. So yeah, for some clients, we are using this, for instance, where we have 90% precision, but only 6% of recall. Sometimes we are more on that part. Depends. But as I said, we saw building this that there is a huge room for improvement. So this is the reason why we're working on some improvement and rebuilding the pipeline and so on. And yeah, this is the technological stack that we use so far. Mainly has been written in Java. We use the simple and fast random forest for the name identity recognition system for the disambiguation. And we built also specific data structure to improve the speed of the annotator. But now it's getting old. And so we are working for the new part, we are working with more state-of-the-art tools like BERT, TensorFlow, some neural networks, and so on. We didn't take into account the the speed of the annotation so far. So we are just experimenting. So a bunch of, maybe it takes 1 minute to annotate a news, but yeah, we are still working on that. And working on this part, so on this, with this new experiment, we got a chance to also to work on these new technologies. Again, I would say that they're not really new, but for a company, you know, even a small company, this is sometimes it's not so. You do not see something like that so often. And for us, it was the first time we worked on this technology on a pretty scale, let's say, as I said. And these are the takeaways of these experiments. We tried to work on these models with the new MacBook, and then this is the first takeaway that I would like to share with you. Never use Apple M1 processor for this kind of tasks. Maybe in a couple of years we will be able to do this with the Apple. But apart from this, the point is that language models like BERT are really effective. But when you are dealing with some specific languages or in a specific use case, then you, yeah, they're good because you reach a very good level right at the beginning, so very fast. But when you want to push the level and improve again, then maybe you have to adapt them, retrain them, and this is something that we are thinking of. And also that nowadays, building NLP, natural language processing building blocks like post-tagger, part-of-speech tagger, sentence splitter, encoders, and so on, are now really cheap. You can find many already trained models on websites like Hugging Face. And so the availability of these models is I mean, nowadays is very good. And a few years ago, you didn't have access to those tools very, very easily. But the point is still that those are building blocks. Then you have to create a pipeline and train the pipeline for an end-to-end task. So nobody can work with a BERT vector. It's useless in its own. You have to create an annotator. So, you know, the end-to-end task requires, again, training data, good training data. Then, yeah, maybe with respect to 5, 6 years ago, you need a bit less data to get this result. But, you know. And also, we got a chance to work with GPU. I don't know if how many of you got this chance, but the point is, yeah, you can run these models on the GPU. It's cool. But if you do not have too much data, sometimes when you have to train a neural network, it's not really necessary when you deal with I mean, often it does not is not really necessary. But when you have a lot of data, and yeah, these GPUs are really make the difference. So this is and now the availability of these kind of machines is is amazing. So on AWS you can create an AC2 machine that has 4 Tesla. This is also old. Sorry, 4 Tesla GPUs with I don't remember. This is 16 gigabytes of GPU memory. It was training a named entity. A post-tagger, I don't remember, or running a post-tagger on a huge number of news. So, okay, this is the part about Company.txt, and Company.txt has been included in a processing pipeline that is called Sedano. This is the basic, this is architecture, so we have some news providers, we gather the news, we ingest the news, we store the news on AWS, then we have a processing pipeline and several steps where here company TXT is inside this part. Then we have optimizer, patcher. We also have, also manual patches because the aim is to, the goal is to have something that is completely automated. But when you have your CEO that say, okay, I had a demo with this customer, and I look at the news that we are able to get for this specific customer, they're completely wrong. Okay, I said, okay, but we got 80% of precision. So it's fine. One out of 5 news or 5 annotations could be wrong. Yes, but I have a demo with that specific customer. So sometimes, again, we have a manual patching system, so where we can add, in addition to the automatic annotation, we can add manually some rules, just like Bloomberg. But we don't have a very huge database. And then we also have clustering, so the possibility to group together news that deal with basically the same event. Then we have the API, there's a coordinator, so there are some microservices that run on this platform. And this is the main pipeline. It's very interesting. Some of the steps poses really interesting challenges, like the cleansing. Again, news data, web news data, again, is web data, so web data is horrible. The encoding, and so you may find also HTML tags somewhere, so you have to deal with this. And when you plan to apply NLP tools on this kind of text, if you don't clean the data, if you don't refine the data, you will have a lot of issues. So you have to work hard on that too. Then we also have the duplication, because you may have the same web news is being published maybe on a local newspaper. This is the Trento issue. This is the Bolzano issue. So you can find maybe on the same newspaper has local editions. So you may find the exactly same news on different newspaper, maybe changing some footer or header. And so we implemented this with an interesting approach based on local sensitive hashing. And also we have business events. So there's a classifier that takes the news as an input and identify whether maybe the news deal with management changes, economic results, and events like that. We also have many other information. We also try to extract many other information, like the sentiment, the location, and so on. And everything is written in Python mainly. The salary is used as a distributed task manager. And so there are also the clustering algorithm is being developed in Go. Classifiers that I showed you are built in with scikit-learn, and so you can find some. These are based basically the standard infrastructure we have as Spazio Dati, so every service runs in basically mostly every service runs in the Kubernetes cluster, and we have a Sentry and other tools for monitoring. The challenge about this, we are not dealing with too much data. For Italian web news, we are talking about 20,000 news per day. In the past, we had a provider that was able to send us even 70,000 news articles per day. So scalability is not really an issue for us at the moment. We are not, but in any case, when you have to process maybe the data, let's say we add a new classifier and you have to classify the web articles of the last 2 years because you just introduced this new classifier in the pipeline right now, then maybe yes, you have to I mean, we fortunately in Spazio Dati we have a lot of infrastructure and already some tools that can let us scale as needed the infrastructure and the workers and the processing. Then we have the most important challenge is about the fact that the news are a stream flow, is a flow. So we are not Bloomberg, like, and we do not have time constraint, but we cannot stop the pipeline for a whole day. So the pipeline has to be up and running. Yeah, we can maybe afford 1 hour, maybe, something like that. And this leads to some operational burden that the team may experience, because if something is broken, you have to stop basically, I mean, I would say immediately. You have maybe 1-2 hours of reaction time. So you have to put a lot of effort in reducing these kind of outages, because otherwise you will be always, you're always working on this pipeline. And whenever you have to add something, is always like an open heart surgery, because you have to work when the pipeline is running. You cannot, as I said, you cannot stop the pipeline for too much time. And also the idempotency is an issue. So ideally, you would like every step to be idempotent. So idempotent means that you can apply this multiple times, but the result of this application is gets the same result. Think about clustering. Clustering is agglomerative. So whenever a news comes, and another one comes, you compute the similarity and you say, okay, those are two similar news. But, and so you create cluster aggregating news that comes one by one. But if the orders of the news changes, or you have to stop and then restart, then you may, or you have to rebuild the indexes, then you have a lot of issues in if you want to guarantee that results are the same you had 1 hour before. Then, yeah, everything I described, the result of this pipeline is available for our user in a Toka news section. And again, these are the news. We have a search engine for the news with basic filters, and but also filters about you know, the companies that have been mentioned, the events that we have found, and also basic filters like a full text or publishing date, and so on. This is, for instance, the detail about the news. You can see that there is the clustering, some business event that we found, the sources of this web news, the company that have been mentioned, and also the sentiment about this event. Yeah, another feature we have made available to our users is the monitoring. So where if you have a list of companies, your portfolio, or a list or a saved search where you have a list together with some keywords, you can create a new search and then use that as a trigger for some emails that you may receive, some alerts. So saying, I'm interested in any negative events about this portfolio company, so I create a saved search, saving these parameters, and I can say to Atoka, so send me an email every week, every day about news that match these criteria I've set. And yeah, this is, for instance, the email that Atoka can send to you. So yeah, basically that's what we did. As I said, Spazio Dati, we are hiring, yeah, vegetarians too, and these are some, also Franz already showed you some positions we have open, and I hope you find this presentation interesting, and yeah, if you have questions.
Right, thank you for the presentation. There are, yes, a few questions. I'll start from the most upvoted one, which is not really a question. Just 5 people want me to show appreciation for the memes.
The first one.
Yeah, that's the most upvoted thing. Then there is, okay, where does Sedan run multiple servers, cloud, Kubernetes? Which challenges did you face or are you facing? You already mentioned most of it. Anything you want to add?
No, I think that the streaming point is the most important one. So you don't have a database that you can, so it's living data. So it can change every time. If you have to deal with this kind of system, you have to build a lot of tools and automation, monitoring to put. You have to put in to have this kind of things. Otherwise, you will be every day you will have to work with these errors and recovery.
Yeah, and one interesting feature is that whenever we want to make a change to the to how we process something, basically you need to go back and do it for the past
what we call a rewind.
Yeah. And which means that you have peaks of workload that you need to manage.
Yeah, and in that case, yeah, you have to scale a bit because
yeah, and Kubernetes helps quite a bit with the scaling aspects.
Yeah.
What are the most unusual and exotic use cases for the company database and for Atoka?
For the company database, I think maybe Franz can answer to this question better. I would say, yeah. I don't think some funny use case. I can see that. I mean, there is a that company that.
Maybe Franz can help.
Yeah, Franz help.
Well, a bit of everything from for example, car manufacturers that they are looking for new clients to like companies that are interested in car fleets. You have like, for example, companies in, for example, football teams that are looking for sponsors for their stadium. You might have companies that have are looking for new customers to provide them with people working for them, people that are looking for new providers. So they use Atoka only for search, for example, for somebody building their own new house or building their new office. So using both for clients and for new providers.
Yeah, they were
there's
asking
basically
for
everything.
A funny use case. But
Funny use cases. I mean, we have a company that sells candles and birthday gifts around Naples. So you see, like, for example, you remember Diddle, like il topo, like the mouse. Like they sell the Diddle and these funny things. And they send birthday wishes both in the cartolibrerie or in the tabacchini, but also to companies when they celebrate their birthdays. For example, we have like football teams or basketball teams that are looking for new B2B customers for the logo on their T-shirts, or for providers for their stadium. It can be anything. I could go on the whole night.
yeah, on my own, I can see
With a beer in your hand.
Yeah, I found, for instance, I searched for we were searching for some partners, for IT partners, to work on, and I used Atoka looking at for instance, we were searching for someone that deals with TypeScript, so we looking at the website of the company and so on. So it's a funny use case.
There's also information about the financials of companies. So when I had to buy my car, I was looking for a specific type of car, and I looked on one of those marketplaces for used cars, and then downloaded the list of all the dealers that had this car, and looked for, in Atoka, I looked for those dealers that were dealing not so well. And then I went to them and said, okay, I see you have this car, you're not dealing so well, so maybe you want to give me a discount. And they did.
Fantastic. Yeah, Spazio Dati uses a Talkative. What happens if an article mentions both Spazio Dati in Trento and Spazio Dati in Sassuolo?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think that it's very hard for an automatic system to deal with kind of issue. The point is that you should be able in any case to understand whether based on the way the text has been written, maybe Spazio Dati in Sassuolo has a different, maybe is closer in the text to Sassuolo, where maybe Spazio Dati is closer in the text to the word Trento. So you can maybe rely. I think that this is could be a very sophisticated approach. I don't think in our experience, I mean, even if this could be interesting, I don't think it's something that, I mean, when we have, those could be happy problems. It means that we already reached a very high level of precision if we have to deal also with this kind of cases, yeah, I would say.
Cool. There is a question about why not using M1 processors, but I know you could do another half an hour of rant on it.
Yeah.
So I think we'll leave that for the networking part. Thank you for your presentation again.
Thanks.
Okay, and that's basically a wrap. Thanks for everyone for joining us. Again, we've been salivating the whole night with these slides, honestly. I really can't wait to eat some Speck. So if you help us, we will start slowly moving to the back of the space here. We will get a beer, we'll get some Speck, and we'll stay out and spend the rest of the night with the main guest. And yeah, meet new people, have a chat, enjoy the night, and we see you next event. Take care, ciao.
Thank you very much. Bye.
And of course, if you want to make a donation to Speck&Tech,
yes, if you want to make a donation, come find me. I'm there, but I will be moving over there in just a minute.
Thanks so much. Good night.